My name is Ken Bocchino. I'm a full systems architect with F5 Networks, and what we're going to go through real quick is a 300 gig multi-layered DDoS attack on our equipment sitting to the right of this screen. So go ahead and check that out after this demo. So right now everything is running in full force. I'm just going to quickly go through some slides just to give you an idea of what we're actually doing. So how many people know what DOS attack is? I'll just give you an idea. Awesome, great. How many people have been attacked? A couple people. So really quickly, DDoS attacks are evolving. They've evolved over time. They've gotten extremely large because of some very, very simple protocols being very vulnerable to amplification attacks. How many people saw the NTP attack last week? It's a fairly large attack. NTP has been out there for a long time now, and it's just until now that people are exploiting it. So I think a lot of people have been seeing DNS amplification attacks. You're starting to see more attacks that are masking the fact that people are exfiltrating data from networks. So while you're being attacked, people are also in the process of getting data out of your network. There's a very hard process to be able to log and analyze that data later too. So what F5 does is a little bit different from everyone else is we are a full proxy. This gives us the ability to provide protection at different layers of the OSI model. And in this demo, you're going to see essentially a L3 through 4 protection mechanism, and then protocol-based protection mechanisms for HTTP and DNS. How many people run an authoritative DNS server for their enterprise today? A couple people. So we are in this demo running a f5.demo domain, and we are hosting authoritative records on both a Linux bind process as well as within our F5 appliance with GTM. And we're able to protect DNS quite well with the amount of load that's coming through the system. How many people are familiar with SYN attacks or SYN floods? It's a pretty basic attack. It works really well. You don't necessarily need a lot of bandwidth to be able to take down a web server. So low and slow attacks and SYN floods essentially fill up the connection table. And we essentially here at F5 have mechanisms to protect those using SYN cookies, and by doing that in hardware, as well as a lot of other attack types, we are able to properly protect against large attacks, as well as small attacks that are low and slow. So we're also doing a SYN flood during this attack process. HTTP floods are a larger challenge nowadays with low orbit ion cannon. So these are tools that allow anonymous and other social attackers to participate in these large attacks. So you right now can go home illegally, grab low orbit ion cannon, and essentially grab the data of how they're going to want you to attack a certain victim very easily on your own home PC and generate enough load to potentially tip over these small and large enterprise customers that are being targeted by anonymous. And these essentially are floods from JavaScripts from different bot networks that are out there. And essentially the campaign strategy is shifting to where now Anonymous and other organizations can work as a team to use different tactics to attack different victims, different networks. And by doing so, attacks are essentially shifting and becoming multi-layered nowadays, where for 30 minutes until someone's put in some sort of mechanism to prevent that attack, they'll go at a high volume rate, shift over to a new attack mechanism very quickly because they can distribute that information out extremely fast on a bot network as well as with participants in the actual attack. So I mentioned earlier, how many people have a DNS authoritative zone that they host within their organization? So this is a very vulnerable point of your delivery, application delivery. You got to think about a DNS protection mechanism if you are authoritative for your network, because the easiest thing to go after in certain situations is the DNS infrastructure hosting your A records. So if you don't have protection around your DNS infrastructure, potentially, even if you have protection within your HTTP and application delivery systems, you're vulnerable to DDoS attack. So just a quick diagram of what we actually are demonstrating here at the RSA show. We have two ISPs, one being our IX load, which generates all of our SYN flood activity, and the second one being our breaking point blades, which is essentially simulating our DNS amplification and our DNS authoritative attacks, as well as our web-based attacks to www.f5.demo. So let's take a look at what we're actually doing on the network. So right now we have, this is the F5 dashboard, essentially all the load that's going through the platform. It's a real simplified view of the environment. And you can see on our traffic generation on the bottom right, we're kind of hovering around 200 to 300 gigs of load coming through the platform. And that's that combination of all the attacks as well as good traffic that's coming through the same infrastructure. So we're able to validate that even though we're under this type of load, we are successfully responding to the web-based and DNS-based queries that our good traffic generators is emulating. So just real quick, we have some data going to Splunk. These are somewhat simplified just to show you a lot of data all at once. Essentially at the top here, we are using IP intelligence, which is updated on a 5-minute basis, to block a large portion of the internet that's coming in to attack the network. So we're simulating a very large internet pool, and we are able to block a majority of that traffic using IP intelligence. This is essentially a tool set that you guys can use from an enterprise perspective to start dropping known bad actors against your web-based applications as well as DNS and any other systems that you might have. You can tie this into mail delivery and other applications that you are hosting out of your infrastructure. Towards the bottom we have our L7 DDoS attack. So I'll speak briefly about this. The way we identify bad actors in regards to the web protocol is multifold. The one that we're choosing, or the box is choosing to implement for this protection, is using client-side injection to ensure that the client can answer properly and validate they are not a bot. So we can very quickly identify that a user is not a bot, and by doing that we can protect the backend web server. So the request doesn't even make it to the backend application server. And we can tell when we need to start doing that based on TPS, high TPS to the application, based on the response times from the backend servers. If those start to increase based on percentage or based on a set amount, we can start interrogating the users coming into your environment more frequently. And in essence, start blocking those users before they come into your environment using up precious resources. The client-side injection is a very small, and I'll show you a very small injection, and then very quickly we can move into a blocking mechanism for those same users. And then later down on this, we have essentially a DNS-based protection graph, just briefly on the number of any, so requests for any types on your authoritative zone. So we're doing a very high rate of DNS requests for an any record, which is commonly used for DNS amplification. So you could be a tool used for DNS amplification attacks. There right now is about 30 million DNS authoritative servers that are still open resolvers that participate in large DNS amplification. So one thing to take out of this discussion is going back to your enterprise and make sure that if you have public DNS servers to start locking those down to only allow recursion for your enterprise. So a couple other real brief graphs here. Essentially, this is all of the traffic that's coming in that's being blocked by IP intelligence. You can see that we are we're simulating essentially the entire internet coming into the F5 equipment right now, and we're successfully blocking these users. Our second graph here is showing our L7 DDoS attack attempts. This is not number of requests, but the number of unique attacks that are being seen per region. And essentially, this is where we're doing that client-side injection and blocking that user from hitting our back-end web server. It does take a little bit of resources on your front-end pipe, but in essence, we can start blocking those users at the SYN, so you're only seeing the SYNs come in. And then lastly, here we have essentially all that DNS traffic coming in and being blocked for the DNS authoritative zones. And we're using the DNS Express mechanisms to protect that bind server sitting behind us. So that bind server wouldn't be able to do the 2.9 million or 3 million DNS requests that we're doing per second. The F5 is standing in due to a zone transfer to the F5 into memory and is responding and or blocking the requests to the DNS zone that we're authoritative for. So I'm going to briefly show you, because we're a Seattle-based company, obviously the Seahawks did quite well this year, and essentially we are sitting in front of that page right now. The same page that we're sending, in essence, 68,000 connections per second, where we have 4,000 good requests coming per second as well. So we essentially are answering all the protection mechanisms that are in place for this site and are successfully going through to the backend web server that's being simulated by the Ixia. And it's very quick, even though we're sending about 200 to 300 gigabits per second of load to it. Show you really briefly on some of the data you can get out of the F5 in regards to graphing. Here we can see our attack has started. We have a couple different attack IDs, the ones that you saw pop up on the map, and we can dig in deeper and see the top talkers in regards to client addresses that might be attacking us, and we can get further information to make decisions as a SOC administrator or a network administrator to say, okay, well, it looks like China or another geo is coming in and attacking me. Is there anything I can put in place, like geo-based blocking within the F5, to prevent that attack and protect the users that I want and care most about bringing into my application? Here we see basically our DNS protocol attacks. Let me go and refresh this since we started. We can see we're getting about, it's hard to see, it's being cropped, so about 450,000 requests per second of DNS traffic that we're just dropping based on query type. I'm going to show you the query types here. So we're essentially rate limiting the NS lookup, authoritative response for the NS zone. So we can start to rate limit different query types because we know that there shouldn't be a high volume of load based on our TTL values. So we can start reducing the amount of bandwidth utilized for outbound DNS responses. Here we are looking at some of the L2 through 4 attacks that are occurring on the box. We picked to use a UDP LAN attack. So this is a very large UDP flood coming into our appliance, and we're successfully dropping about 9.4 million in the last few minutes that we've been talking. Lastly, I just want to show you some of the DNS statistics here. Oops. So in the last couple seconds, we've essentially sent 37 billion DNS requests to our platform. And that's a mix of the 5 different attacks that I spoke to. Some we are allowing to be responded to because we're protecting it with DNS Express. You can see we have a fair number of requests going to that DNS Express platform. And we're answering properly with a no error for the ones that we are properly wanting to respond to. Others, as I said, any type we have blocked and are not responding for, and others we are rate limiting with the technology they have to protect DNS. Lastly, I want to show you some of the SYN flood data. So essentially what we do is we elect to move closer to hardware to be able to respond to high loads. So essentially right now we're sending about 56 million we're sending about 56 million SYN floods per second, which equates to about 56 gigs. So if you're a large ISP sitting at the edge, you can use this platform to start protecting your clients behind it. Again, going into the whole model of moving the perimeter outwards, where you have good access to throughput at very low rates, or if you're an ISP looking to provide DDoS protection, you can do that with this platform. So with those SYN floods coming in, again, that's going to the same page that we're going to here. So I'm properly answering the SYN cookie, and then further answering all the L2 through 4 protection mechanism, and then further answering all the L7 protocol-based inspection that's going against my request here. So again, essentially what you saw in the last 10 minutes was a 200 to 300 gigabit DDoS attack that was multi-layered and successfully protected by the F5 platform.